Hey everyone, my name's John Bruner. I'm with O'Reilly, and I live in San Francisco. I used to live in New York. In both cases, I've spent tons and tons of time traveling, just going back and forth across the country on these awful 6-hour flights and listening to these people talk. And it's always struck me that the way that pilots and flight attendants speak to passengers is a really unique kind of communication that's really ineffective. So a few years ago, I was on a flight from San Francisco to New York, and I recorded the entire flight on a little pocket recorder that I had with me. And when I got back to my desk, I transcribed everything that had been said to us on the flight. And this is it. This is 3,000 words, which is equivalent to like 12 pages of a novel. And it's color-coded. These are the flight attendants speaking in blue. The pilot was the greatest part of it. He spoke 1,500 words during the flight. Most of it was about weather. This is like, the weather is not so hot there in Kennedy, so we may get some holding. If we get some holding, as soon as we're able, we'll just let you know how long the hold is going to be. This is a map. This is a timeline of the flight. It was 16 minutes of announcements in a 6-hour flight. It's almost 5% of this flight was spent listening to people make announcements, and just especially when you're on the ground. So what did they talk about? 19 times they talked about the seatbelts. There's tons of repetition here. The seatbelt sign goes on. They even just said the seatbelt sign is off. The seatbelt sign is on. Your seatbelt should be securely fastened. There are like 12 times they talked about electronics. This was a couple of years ago. It was before you were able to use electronics on the ground. But your electronics are off, your cell phones are bad, watch the video, turn off your electronics, turn your electronics off. Now turn your electronics back on. They talk about ladies and gentlemen a lot. They kept addressing us as ladies and gentlemen. There's this kind of like false sincerity that I'll get to in a moment. But this is a kind of padding, and I'm gonna get into padding in just a little bit. The whole thing winds up being completely ineffective. Because everyone's been on an airplane before, and they're just kind of like burning time talking to you. So let's think about some of the things that they say that don't make any sense. They tell you how to buckle a seatbelt, and a lot of time is spent doing this. A lot of time is saying, like, you have to obey all the signs, which is something that like a sign necessarily tries to do. So I took an informal poll of the people in the waiting area in front of me and behind me as I got on the plane. Everyone had been on an airplane before, and everyone had used a seatbelt before. So you really didn't need to be told how the seatbelt connected. Of course, once in a while, someone does. But this is a kind of overkill that makes for bad communication when you tell everyone. You must obey posted and lighted signs. Again, this is like completely self-explanatory, but they're kind of they're addressing a risk. There's all this really disingenuous kind of like thank you bullshit that they bring out all over the place. No one on United Airlines finds it a pleasure to serve you. This is the worst thing. The flight attendants use this thing called do support. Linguists call it do support. It's a way of addressing a negative. If you say, you don't ski to work every day, do you? You might say, no, I do ski to work every day. Now, they use this all the time. Our in-flight service does consist of 2 carts. Uses do support. As though you're saying, your in-flight service doesn't consist of 2 carts, does it? No, it does consist of 2 carts. This is so what they're doing is they're trying to be a little more emphatic. They pad it a lot with at this time, which doesn't really tell you anything because like you're making an announcement, and the announcement's generally about now. So you don't need to say, right now, I'm making an announcement, and right now, turn off all your electronic devices. They say kindly a lot, which doesn't mean anything. Again, it's like you're making a request that's backed up by the force of law about putting your tray tables away. This isn't like a favor to the flight attendant, but they use kindly many times in this transcript. They just like keep piling up this disingenuous, repetitious, obvious statements because no one is listening. And when you speak as though no one is listening, you become incredibly tedious and people stop listening. So this is something you need to keep in mind as you're designing these awesome conversations that you're all putting into your bots. Speak as though people are listening and as though as though their time is valuable and they'll listen to you, unlike the people on airplanes. Thank you.